Abandon ignorance, Ramana Maharshi. Ignorance is of two kinds: forgetting the self and obstruction to the knowledge of the self. The impurities of the mind, ignorance, doubt, and false identification are the obstacles that must be removed. To completely eliminate ignorance, the disciple must listen to the truth repeatedly until his understanding of the subject becomes perfect. To dispel doubts, he must reflect on what he has heard. Eventually, his knowledge will be free from all uncertainty. To remove the false identification of the self with the non-self, such as the body, the senses, the mind, or the intellect, his mind must become one-pointed. When all these things are accomplished, the obstacles disappear, and samadhi arises. Peace reigns. Some say that one should never stop listening, reflecting, and concentrating. These cannot be fulfilled merely by reading books, but only through continuous practice to keep the mind withdrawn. We believe in everything except reality. We must abandon all false beliefs, for this is the only thing we need to do. Because man identifies with the body, he sees the world as separate from himself. This false identification arises because he has lost his anchor and strayed from his original state. Now, he is advised to abandon all these false ideas, trace back his origin, and remain as the self. In this state, there are no differences. No questions will arise. All the Shastras, the sacred scriptures, exist only to guide man back to his original source. He does not need to acquire anything new. He only needs to abandon his false ideas and useless additions. But instead of doing this, he tries to grasp something strange and mysterious, believing that happiness lies elsewhere. This is the mistake. Happiness is inherent in man and does not depend on external causes. As long as you seek something outside yourself to attain happiness, there will be no happiness for you. The greatest mistake of man is thinking that he is weak by nature, that he is bad by nature. Every man is divine and strong in his true essence. What is weak and bad are his habits, his desires, and his thoughts, but not his true self. Peace is your natural state. It is the mind that destroys it. Realization is not something new to be attained. It is already present. All that is required is to rid yourself of the thought, "I have not realized." The individual's effort is directed only toward the removal of his own ignorance. When this ignorance ceases, one discovers that the true nature of the self has always been there. From the heart arises the notion, "I am," the fundamental fact of the individual's experience. By itself, I am is pure and untainted. Pure consciousness, completely unrelated to the physical body and transcending the mind, is a matter of direct experience. Just as an ordinary man is aware of his physical existence, the sage is aware of his incorporeal and timeless existence. That which is eternal is not perceived as such due to ignorance. Ignorance is the obstruction. All that needs to be done is to remove it. That which arises in this body, as I, is the mind. If the mind, which is the instrument of knowledge and the basis of all activity, ceases, the perception of the world as an objective reality also ceases. Investigate what the mind is, and it will disappear. The mind does not exist apart from thoughts. When all thoughts are silenced, only pure consciousness remains. The mind is restless by nature. Begin by freeing it from restlessness. Give it peace. Make it free from distractions. Train it to look inward. Make this a habit. This is done by ignoring the external world and removing all obstacles to peace of mind. The mind is naturally inclined to wander, but you are not the mind. The mind rises and sinks. It is impermanent, transient, while you are eternal. Only the inquiry, "Who am I?" is necessary. The question, "Who am I?" does not seek an answer. The question, "Who am I?" exists only to dissolve the questioner. Self-inquiry reveals the truth that neither the ego nor the mind truly exists. It allows one to perceive the undifferentiated pure being of the self, the absolute. You will know in due time that your true glory lies where you cease to exist. You are consciousness. Consciousness is another name for you. Since you are consciousness, there is no need to attain or cultivate it. That which continues to exist in both the waking and sleeping states is the same in both. But in the waking state, there is the experience of suffering and thus the effort to remove it. When asked, who wakes up from sleep, you answer, I. Hold firmly to this I. If this is done, the eternal self will reveal itself. If you hold on to this sense of I long enough and with enough intensity, the false I will disappear, leaving only the uninterrupted awareness of the real and immanent I, the very consciousness itself. Self-surrender is the same as self-knowledge. We can make the mind calm and serene by realizing the source of the mind so that it disappears, or by practicing self-surrender so that it is subdued. Self-surrender is the same as self-knowledge and neither necessarily implies self-mastery. Surrender can only be effective when done with full understanding of what true surrender means. Such understanding comes after inquiry and reflection and inevitably ends in self-surrender. To surrender is to yield to the original cause of your being. If one remains as the self, there is bliss. But one thinks that merely being still does not bring bliss. This is due to ignorance. Bliss is not something added to your nature. It is simply revealed as your true and natural state, eternal and imperishable. The only way to rid yourself of suffering is to know and be the self. It is often said, know thyself. But even this is not entirely correct. If we speak of knowing the self, then two selves must exist, one that knows and another that is known, as well as the process of knowing. But the state we call realization is simply being who you are, not knowing something or becoming something. If one has attained realization, he is simply that which he is and always has been. The state we call realization is simply being yourself, not knowing anything or striving to become something. If one has understood, he is that which alone is, and which alone has ever been. He cannot describe this state. He can only be that. That which is peace. Peace is our true nature. We disturb it. What is required is that we stop disturbing it. Reality being yourself, there is nothing for you to attain. All that is required is to stop considering the unreal as real. Effortless and choiceless awareness is our natural state. If we can attain it or abide in it, all is well. But for most people, it cannot be attained without effort, the effort of deliberate meditation. All old tendencies push the mind outward and direct it toward external objects. All such thoughts must be abandoned, and the mind must be turned inward. For this, effort is necessary for most people. In the end, everything will be well. Gradually, all obstacles are overcome. Everything works out in the end. Constant determination is what is needed. Undoubtedly, some books say that we must cultivate one quality after another to prepare for liberation. But for those who follow the path of self-inquiry, their effort alone is enough to acquire all good qualities. They need not do anything else. The self is simply being, not this or that. It is just being, be, and that is the end of ignorance. The matrix is complex, but each of us holds a part of the solution. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and together we'll see beyond appearances.